Radio was king in the 1970s. If a song didn't make the airwaves, it might as well not exist. And yet, some of the most unforgettable music of the decade never got played at all. Today we're looking at 12 songs from the 1970s that were banned from radio. Number 12, Brown Sugar by the Rolling Stones.
Brown sugar, how come you taste so good?
The Rolling Stones kicked off the decade with one of the most electrifying and immediately controversial singles in rock history. Released in April 1971 as the lead single from Sticky Fingers, Brown Sugar shot straight to number 1 in both the United States and Canada. In the UK, it peaked at number 2.
Brown sugar, just like a young girl should now.
The song was recorded at Muscle Shoals Sound Studio in Sheffield, Alabama, over 3 days in December 1969. A fitting location given the southern weight of its subject matter. Mick Jagger wrote it primarily during the filming of the movie Ned Kelly that same year. It sat unreleased for over a year due to legal disputes with the band's former label, before finally arriving on the newly formed Rolling Stones Records imprint in April 1971. What made stations uncomfortable was the combination of subjects embedded in the track. Slavery, interracial sex, drug use, and violence were all woven into a song that moved like pure rock and roll. Many radio stations quietly dropped it from rotation. Some were more vocal about it, pulling it from playlists altogether, unable to reconcile the song's enormous commercial energy with what it was actually describing. Billboard ranked Brown Sugar the 16th biggest song of 1971 in its year-end chart. Commercially dominant despite the resistance from certain stations, the song went on to become one of the Stones' most recognized concert staples for decades. In 2021, the band quietly removed it from their setlist during the No Filter US tour, and the debate about what it means has never fully settled.
Brown sugar, how come you taste so good?
Number 11, Working Class Hero by John Lennon.
A working class hero is something to be.
John Lennon released John Lennon/Plastic Ono Band in December 1970, just months after the Beatles' formal dissolution. It was the most stripped down and emotionally raw record of his solo career. Lennon, a sparse band, and a set of songs that made no attempt to comfort anyone. Working Class Hero was one of them.
They hate you if you're clever, and they despise a fool.
The BBC banned it immediately. The reason was direct. The song contained the word "fking," used twice, in verses describing the way working-class people are kept in their place through education, distraction, and social pressure. The BBC's position on that language was firm, and the ban was not negotiable.
A working class hero is something to be.
The song appeared on the album rather than as a British standalone single, which limited some of its immediate commercial exposure. Marianne Faithfull later recorded a cover version, and hers was also banned by the BBC for exactly the same reason.
A working class hero is something to be.
What made the band feel particularly pointed to many listeners at the time was the subject of the song itself. Lennon was describing the experience of being controlled and silenced, and the institution that banned it was doing precisely that. The irony was not lost on the people who were paying attention. Working Class Hero has been covered numerous times across multiple decades. The argument the song makes, that society keeps ordinary people small through invisible structures of management, became more, not less, relevant as the years went on.
A working class hero is something to be.
Number 10. Give Ireland Back to the Irish by Wings. In January 1972, British troops opened fire on a peaceful civil rights march in Derry, Northern Ireland, killing 14 unarmed civilians. The event became known as Bloody Sunday. Paul McCartney recorded a response 2 days later. The result was Wings' debut single, Give Ireland Back to the Irish, released in February 1972, and it was banned before most people ever had a chance to hear it. The BBC, ITV, and Radio Luxembourg all imposed immediate broadcast bans. The BBC's position was that airing the song would imply the corporation held a political stance on Northern Ireland, a line it was not willing to cross. Radio 1 DJ Alan Freeman, presenting his weekly chart rundown, refused to speak the title aloud. He referred to it only as a song by a group called Wings. The single was sitting in the top 25 at the time. McCartney had seen John Lennon write political songs for years and largely kept his distance from that territory. Bloody Sunday changed that. From our point of view, it was the first time people questioned what we were doing in Ireland, he said. The directness was precisely what made it unplayable, as far as British broadcasters were concerned. Despite the ban, Give Ireland Back to the Irish reached number 16 on the UK singles chart and number 21 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States. It went to number 1 in Ireland and, unexpectedly, in Spain. Years later, when McCartney compiled his Wingspan hits collection in 2001, the song was left off entirely. EMI asked him to remove it in the wake of an IRA car bombing in London that year, concerned that including it might appear to express sympathy for the organization. The ban had outlasted the decade. Number 9. Lola by the Kinks. Lola arrived in the summer of 1970 and made the top 5 in both the United Kingdom and the United States. On the surface, it was a cheerful, propulsive rock song about a chance encounter in a London club. Ray Davies had written something considerably more layered beneath it. A good-natured, plainly told story about a young man falling for a transgender woman. In Australia, several radio stations banned the song because of its subject matter. The gender identity theme, handled by Davies with a shrug and a steady backbeat, was not something conservative Australian broadcasters were prepared to put on air in 1970. The BBC's reason for restricting the record was entirely different. The original recording included the phrase Coca-Cola in the lyrics, and BBC policy strictly prohibited any mention of branded products in broadcast songs. They considered it advertising. To resolve the issue, Ray Davies flew from New York back to London, interrupting the Kinks' American tour mid-run to re-record just that one line. He changed it to Cherry Cola. The ban was lifted, and the tour resumed. The version that reached the charts in 1970 was already a second recording, the one the BBC had agreed to play. Even with that edit in place, Australian stations continued to avoid the song on entirely separate grounds. Lola has since become one of the Kinks' most beloved records, a song banned twice, for 2 entirely different reasons, by 2 different sets of broadcasters on opposite sides of the world. Number 8. Imagine by John Lennon.
Imagine there's no countries.
Released in October 1971, Imagine became one of the best-selling singles of Lennon's solo career and one of the most geopolitically fraught songs of the decade. It was a soft, piano-led ballad on the surface, but underneath it challenged the existence of countries, religion, and private property in the plainest possible language.
Imagine all the people.
South Africa's apartheid government banned it. The South African Broadcasting Corporation had already placed all of Lennon's solo work under restriction, an extension of its 1966 ban on all Beatles music, following his remark that the band was more popular than Jesus. Imagine, with its direct invocation of a world without religion, fits squarely within their criteria. Bootleg cassette copies circulated among listeners who still wanted to hear it. Christian groups in the United States objected to those same passages, calling the song blasphemous. Several American stations in more conservative markets chose not to play it, though it still reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and topped the charts in the United Kingdom and other countries worldwide.
Imagine all the people.
30 years after its release, following the September 11, 2001 attacks, Clear Channel Communications distributed a memo to its network of over 1,000 radio stations, listing more than 150 songs deemed lyrically inappropriate for the moment. Imagine was on that list, a song about world peace, restricted again, for a different reason, in a different century. It is now performed at Olympic ceremonies, peace rallies, and memorial events around the world. The song that parts of the radio world found too radical in the 1970s has become the default anthem for hope. Number 7. School's Out by Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper's School's Out arrived in the summer of 1972 and immediately became the seasonal anthem of every teenager counting down the days until the end of term. It reached number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States and hit number 1 in the United Kingdom. As a piece of commercial rock, it was an enormous success. As a piece of broadcast content, several stations weren't sure what to do with it. In the United Kingdom, BBC programming restricted the song based on concerns that it encouraged disruptive student behavior, cheerfully celebrating the act of walking away from school and institutional authority. The worry wasn't primarily about explicit content. It was about the song's gleeful tone around disorder, which made certain broadcasters uneasy at a time when youth culture was already being watched closely. In the United States, conservative markets flagged the song for similar reasons. Parent groups in some areas objected to radio stations programming it, particularly during the school year. Cooper has consistently maintained that School's Out was meant to capture pure, uncomplicated joy, the feeling of summer arriving, rather than any genuine incitement to anything. The song's commercial success was unaffected by the restrictions, and it became a seasonal fixture regardless. Records that made institutions nervous, while audiences lined up for them. Number 6. The Pill by Loretta Lynn. By 1975, Loretta Lynn was one of the biggest names in country music. She had devoted fans across rural America and a long track record of addressing subjects other performers in the genre wouldn't touch. Then she released The Pill, and a significant portion of country radio wanted nothing to do with it. The song had actually been written and recorded in 1972, co-written by Lorene Allen, Don McCann, T.D. Bayless, and Lynn herself. Her label, MCA, held it back for 3 full years, fully aware of what was coming. When it finally arrived in early 1975, it became the most controversial record of her career. More than 60 country radio stations across the United States refused to play it. The ban stretched from Atlanta to Detroit.
You set this chicken your last time, 'cause now I've got...
A Kentucky preacher took to the pulpit to denounce Lynn and the song by name. The Grand Ole Opry held a 3-hour internal meeting over whether she would be allowed to perform it on their stage. Lynn reportedly made clear she was willing to walk away from the Opry entirely over the matter.
Since I've got the pill.
The subject was birth control. Specifically, the freedom that the pill gave a married woman tired of being pregnant year after year, while her husband did as he pleased. It was honest, funny, and cutting. For many women in rural areas where the topic was still whispered about, it was the first time they had heard a public figure address it plainly on a record. Despite everything, The Pill became Lynn's highest-charting solo pop single, peaking at number 70 on the Billboard Hot 100. It went to number 1 in Canada. People magazine reported at the time it was selling 15,000 copies a week without airplay. Lynn went on to say it was among her personal favorites. In her lifetime, 14 of her songs were banned from country radio. None of them caused a bigger storm than this one. Number 5. Love to Love You Baby by Donna Summer. Before Donna Summer became the queen of disco, she was a young American singer living in Germany, working with producer Giorgio Moroder on what would become her international breakthrough. Love to Love You Baby was released in November 1975, and it changed everything, including the response from radio stations on both sides of the Atlantic. The song's full album version ran 16 minutes and 48 seconds. Summer had originally suggested the lyric to Marauder as a concept, rather than a finished song. Casablanca Records president Neil Bogart played an early version at a party, and guests demanded to hear it again and again, which is how he arrived at asking Marauder to extend it to its extraordinary length. To record her vocal properly, Summer lay on the studio floor in near total darkness. The BBC banned it outright, having counted 23 instances of simulated sexual sounds in the recording. In the United States, Reverend Jesse Jackson's organization, Operation Push, campaigned publicly against the song, arguing it contributed to moral decline. Italian state broadcaster RAI banned it as well. Casablanca released an edited single version. Even that shorter cut drew complaints from some stations. And yet, the song climbed to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, spending 2 weeks there in February 1976, held from the top only by Paul Simon's 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. In the UK, despite the BBC's refusal to promote it, it reached number 4 on the UK singles chart. Love to Love You Baby was one of the first disco songs issued in an extended format, a format that became standard for the entire genre. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame named it one of the 500 songs that shaped rock and roll in 1995. Summer herself later said she regretted it was her introduction to the world. But the world had already made up its mind. Number 4. God by John Lennon. The same Plastic Ono Band album that gave us Working Class Hero also contained God, a song that drew fire for entirely different reasons. Where the other was banned for language, God drew restrictions for its content. Lennon opens the song by declaring that God is a concept by which people measure their pain, and then proceeds through a long list of things he says he no longer believes in: magic, the Bible, Kennedy, Buddha, mantra, yoga, Kinks, Elvis, Zimmerman, and the Beatles, among others. He closes by simply saying, "The dream is over." The South African Broadcasting Corporation, which had already banned all Beatles music from its airwaves in 1966 and had extended those restrictions to Lennon's solo output, found additional grounds here. A song in which Lennon explicitly stated he did not believe in Jesus fit directly within the SABC's criteria for prohibited broadcast material. Several American stations in conservative markets also declined to carry the album. Its presence on Plastic Ono Band made it one of the most discussed and, in certain regions, most restricted recordings of the early 1970s. What made God genuinely affecting, beyond the controversy, was the moment near the end where Lennon placed the Beatles in the past tense alongside everything else he was leaving behind. For many listeners, that was the first time the reality of the breakup truly landed. Stations that banned the record for its religious content may have missed that the most quietly devastating line in the song had nothing to do with religion at all.
Don't believe in Beatles.
Number 3. Tonight's the Night, Gonna Be Alright by Rod Stewart.
Tonight's the night.
Rod Stewart was not generally thought of as a provocateur. By 1976, he was one of the best-selling artists in the world, warm, raspy-voiced, and reliably commercial. Then he released Tonight's the Night, Gonna Be Alright, and radio stations on both sides of the Atlantic found themselves in an uncomfortable position. The song featured his then-girlfriend, Swedish actress Britt Ekland, whispering in French near the end of the recording. Some stations simply edited around that section to make the song playable. Others looked more carefully at the remaining lyrics, which contained a fairly direct reference to a sexual encounter, and pulled the record from their playlists entirely.
Tonight's the night.
In the United States, Tonight's the Night spent 8 consecutive weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, one of the longest-running number 1s of the decade. In the United Kingdom, It reached number 5. The commercial performance was remarkable precisely because a meaningful number of stations had chosen not to play it. Yet it still dominated the charts. Stewart himself appeared largely unbothered, and the song's commercial record made it difficult to argue that the restrictions had caused any lasting damage. If anything, the attention only added to its reputation. Tonight's the Night opened Stewart's A Night on the Town album. In 1976, it was simultaneously one of the most banned songs on American radio, and one of the most played. Number 2. God Save the Queen by Sex Pistols.
God save the Queen. She ain't no human being.
On May 27, 1977, the Sex Pistols released God Save the Queen on Virgin Records, the band's third label in barely over a year, after both EMI and A&M had dropped them. 4 days later, the BBC announced a total ban on the record. The Independent Broadcasting Authority followed. Radio 2 controller Charles McClelland described it publicly as being in gross bad taste. Major retailers Woolworths and W.H. Smith refused to stock it. Workers at Virgin's pressing plant had walked off the job in protest during production. The song's cover, designed by Jamie Reed, displayed a photograph of Queen Elizabeth II with cut-out newspaper text obscuring her eyes and mouth. The band's name and song title pieced across her face in a ransom note style.
God save the Queen. She ain't no human being.
The release coincided with Queen Elizabeth II's Silver Jubilee, her 25th year on the throne. The band has maintained that the timing was not fully intentional. Drummer Paul Cook said they were not aware of the Jubilee date when the song was being written. Its original title had been No Future. Despite the BBC ban and the retail boycotts, the single sold nearly 150,000 copies in its first week. It reached number 1 on the NME chart. On the official UK singles chart during the week of the Silver Jubilee, it appeared at number 2, with a blank line printed in place of its title on Dutch Smith's in-store displays. Many observers, then and since, have argued the Pistols had outsold the competition that week. Banned from every major radio outlet in Britain, it still rewrote the rules of what a banned record could accomplish.
God save the Queen. She ain't no human being.
Number 1. Short People by Randy Newman.
Short people got no reason. Short
Randy Newman released Short People in 1977 as a single from his Little Criminals album. Newman had built his career as a songwriter of unusual temperament, sardonic, funny, and almost always operating at one remove from what a song appeared to be saying. Short People was no exception. Written in the voice of an absurdly petty narrator expressing hostility toward people of smaller stature, it was satire designed to expose how stupid all prejudice sounds when you follow its logic all the way to the end. Not everyone read it that way.
little hands, little eyes.
Several American radio stations pulled the record or declined to add it to rotation, believing Newman was expressing genuine contempt. Politicians in Maryland responded seriously enough that a bill was introduced in the state legislature declaring the song offensive. The bill did not advance, but it indicated how far the misreading had traveled. Newman has been consistent in explaining the song's intent across decades of interviews. Despite everything, Short People reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, making it one of the biggest commercial hits of his solo career. Newman later donated royalties to organizations supporting people of short stature as a gesture of goodwill following the controversy. The deeper irony is hard to miss. A satirical song about the irrationality of prejudice was itself banned by programmers who had misread it entirely. A song written to make people feel embarrassed about how prejudice sounds produced, in its own small way, exactly the kind of reaction it was mocking, and a kind of proof that the point needed making.
Short people got no reason. Short
The 1970s were full of music that made someone uncomfortable. A broadcaster, a government, a preacher, a programming director, a retailer, and in case after case, the records that got banned turned out to be the ones that endured, the ones audiences wanted more desperately, precisely because someone had tried to keep them from hearing them. Some of these songs are now broadcast on the very networks that once refused to air them, played without a second thought. Some are still debated. Some are just quietly, undeniably part of the fabric of what those years sounded like. Radio tried to silence them. And history kept playing them anyway. If this brought back some memories, go ahead and hit like. And if you want more videos like this one, make sure you're subscribed. We'll see you in the next one.